Let us start with Big Tish having her $500 million penalty for a victimless crime in which there was no complainant between two sophisticated private actors has been overturned. The order that was issued by New York nipple Judge Engoron, I've got to back it up all the way to the beginning of this story because it's been so long and it's been, occurring over such an extended period of time with the revelations that we've been learning occurring over time. We got to back it up all the way to the beginning. And it begins with Letitia James' election promise. Is this the one that... Oh, no, yeah. We'll start with this. I've got a bunch of clips of Letitia James going back a while. If you've been with the channel for a while, you've seen these. Letitia James, now I got to start with the right one. Letitia James literally campaigned off prosecuting Donald John Trump. And if you have any doubts of this, I'm going to bring you the clips. Listen to this. I might play the whole thing just because I think we need to see it. This was from, I want to say 2018.
America is an uncharted territory. We are angrier and more deeply divided than we've ever been at any point in our history since the Civil War. And at the eye of the storm is Donald Trump, ripping families apart, threatening women's most basic rights, and running for Attorney General because I will never be afraid to challenge this illegitimate president.
I'm running for Attorney General because I will never shy away from challenging this illegitimate president. That sounds like election denialism that can land you in jail. This was her campaign when she was running for AG of New York, running on a basis of prosecuting her political rival by name.
When our fundamental rights are at stake.
Look at her face. Look at her face. Look at her ugly, snarling face.
Legitimate president. When our fundamental rights are at stake. From the Muslim ban to efforts to deport immigrants, to denying transgender students the ability to choose whatever bathroom they want, rolling back regulations to protect our planet, colluding with foreign powers.
You realize everything she said now has proven to be an absolute lie. There was no Muslim ban, there was no collusion, and now we have the evidence that the scumbag scoundrels in bed with which she was, don't know why I'm speaking like Yoda, were the ones who manufactured that lie from the get-go.
Putting profits over people, dividing us in ways we haven't seen in generations. I believe that this president is incompetent. I believe that this president is ill-equipped to serve in the highest office of this land.
So I'm going to run for Attorney General to put this man behind bars is what she ran for and was elected on in the commie state of New York.
And I believe that he is an embarrassment to all that we stand for. He should be charged with obstructing justice. I believe that the president of these United States can be indicted for criminal offenses. And we would join with law enforcement and other attorneys general across this nation in removing this president from office. In addition to that, the office of Attorney General will continue to follow the money because we believe that he's engaged in a pattern and practice of money laundering the money from foreign governments here in New York State, and particularly related to his real estate holdings.
Money laundering. Why did she think there would be money laundering from foreign states for his real estate holdings? Because she said domestic banks wouldn't lend to him.
It's important that everyone understand that the days of Donald Trump are coming to an end.
The days of Donald Trump are coming to an end.
Starts with electing an Attorney General who will never back down when Trump or anyone else threatens our rights.
Look at her face.
So I hope that you will join me and vote on Thursday, September 13th, in quiet dignity and defiance.
God just punched me. I bit my cheek there. That sneer of vengefulness. That was literally what she campaigned on, arguing that Trump was laundering money from foreign nations because he couldn't get loans from domestic banks. And when that turned out to be bunk, well, then they had to go after the domestic banks, or at least claim that he defrauded the domestic banks who never complained one day in their life. Now let's get back to the other clip that I brought up a second earlier. Yeah, let's see what she says here.
President Trump was almost on the verge of bankruptcy, and then all of a sudden he was flush with money. And we all know that domestic banks were not offering him and extending any credit to him.
Well, that's obviously wrong.
And so the question is, where did he get all of that money from?
Oh, we all know that domestic banks weren't extending it. Oh, yes, they were. And then when they found that out, then they had to go find a way to go after him for domestic banks lending to him at rates that made everybody happy. Can you believe this? And it's an amazing thing because the internet's forever. I've screen grabbed things so that I make sure that they can't take them down afterwards. There was a post that she put up here a while back. It's just so glorious getting to see these things, documenting them. If she deletes them, they will exist forever on the Viva Fry channel. New York Attorney Letitia James in February 2024 said when powerful people cheat to get better loans, it comes at the expense of hardworking people, especially when you do it through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac type loans, not when you have private actors deciding who they loan to or who they borrow from. Doesn't matter. Set that aside. Everyday Americans cannot lie to a bank to get a mortgage. And if they did, our government would throw the book at them. True. There simply cannot be different rules for different people. Whether or not she's ever going to get her just comeuppance for that, the court today annulled the $500 million verdict. But before we even get into that, I want to highlight Letitia James belongs in jail, not just for her alleged mortgage fraud, which is black on white, guilty and dead to rights. Not just because of that. After she got that disgusting judgment from a judge who you will recall got online and where was it here? Remember that video of New York nipple Judge Engoron basically boasting about all of the tools he had at his disposal to get to the conclusions of law that he wanted to get to? Get ready for the hearing of the... You hear the disgusting potching of this guy's face. Listen to this.
I had one last thing to say about tools. A lot of what I do involves motions. These summary judgment motions I mentioned. And all right.
This is the judge in the file, by the way. This is New York nipple Judge Engoron. We'll get to the nipple in a second. This is the judge in the file. This is some 8 years before. He's at some event talking to some journalists, explaining to him the tools he has as an activist judge. Am I following the law or am I making the law? Oh, we'll see here. I'm going to play it. I'm going to shut my big mouth now. You've all seen this probably. If you haven't, prepare to have your minds blown.
Am I following the law or am I making law? Okay, I'm following law. I'm an impartial referee.
But
it's hard to factor out my own emotions. And I have tools. Somebody can say, well, Your Honor, you have to throw out this case because it's just like another case. Well, is it just like another case? What if the defendant was wearing a red sweater instead of a blue sweater? Well, that's an extreme example. That wouldn't distinguish most cases, but there are other facts that do. Maybe the education of somebody who supposedly entered into a contract would decide whether the contract was binding. I have a tool that I'll call a tool called estoppel. Somebody makes an argument and I say, you can't make that argument. You made a different argument 3 months ago in this case, or even in another case.
I have a tool that prevents a defendant or a party from availing themselves of arguments in law. You said something different in this case or another case. I've got tools. Am I following the law or am I making the law? I'm impartial, but we all have our biases, and I've got my tools to come to whatever conclusions I want, whether or not it's as trivial as the color of your sweater.
So I wish you all luck. I'll stand here or around afterwards for questions. And again, thanks to the administration for having me.
You should be standing in jail, New York nipple judge. Now, we're getting to the nips.
One last thing to say
I said we were getting to the nips because I think everybody forgot about the nips. This is just a long summary that I put on Twitter about the New York nipple Judge Engoron. He ran a website for his alumni in which he was boasting about the negative judgments he was rendering against the Trump family, specifically Eric. At one point, to show off that he's an 80-year-old man in reasonably good shape, although that torso looks like a demonic creature from Pan's Labyrinth, he put a picture of his topless body with the camera covering his genitalia and put in the words, bonus torso photo, as if anyone, including the teenagers on his alumni website, want to see that shriveled man's liver-spotted body. This is the judge in the file. Bias, corrupt, and anti-Trump, and proud of it. Came down with a $500 million judgment against Donald Trump for allegedly exaggerating the value of his properties, because New York nipple Judge Engoron said the Mar-a-Lago property that's worth $500 million, if not $1 billion, was actually only worth 18 to 27,000 based on the county appraiser's evaluation. I went to that property as a joke one time during an event and did my own appraisal. It's a beautiful place. $500 million. I will refresh your memories. And I've screen grabbed and tweeted in perpetuity. Letitia James, Big Tish, corrupt biatch, takes to Twitter after the judgment. Because this is what an attorney general who's not a totally corrupt, malicious, POS, SOB, skank. Sorry, I'm saying it. This is what a normal attorney general would do. They would go to Twitter and then tweet out the amount of the award as though they've just owned the president that they campaigned off of persecuting. You remember when she did this? $464,576,230.62. Suck on that, Trump. Oh, this is what attorney generals do. But that's not all she did. And you might remember this one. And if you don't, I'll remember you. And by remember you, I mean remind you. Then she added the interest. Plus $114,553. That was my problem. $114,553.04. Add them together. Because understand, everybody, when they made Trump post the bond, and I think the bond was 100 or 150 million, they reduced it from the actual amount. The interest on this award was accruing. And commie biatch Letitia James was rubbing in the face of Donald Trump that every day that passed, the interest on the $500 million bullshit persecution was $115,000. That's someone's house right there. Every day. And she was happy, proud. Went to Twitter, tweeted out the judgment, then tweeted out the interest, then did the math. And I know that she used Siri to do that. And I just make sure that everybody's going to remember that she did that. Go rub it in her face a little bit here. Oh, gee, that aged well, Tish. Well, today, a little bit of justice. The New York Court of Appeals, at least as relates to annulling the quantum of the insane award, unanimously annulled the award. One judge, as we're going to see in a second, said it was a pure political persecution. And if I haven't made the evidence for that claim, you'll never be able to be convinced. From Fox News, people, New York Court of Appeal throws out $500 million penalty. No one was hurt. No one was damaged. No one complained, except for the state, intervened in a private business transaction between two sophisticated parties, the banks and Donald John Trump. And Letitia said the damage from that, because we have to set a standard for everybody, right? The damages to society, because Donald Trump got a favorable interest rate on his loans, $500 million should do. The court ruled the disgorgement was an excessive fine that violates the Constitution. I love how they say the Eighth Amendment. No, it violated the Constitution because the founding fathers, in their infinite wisdom, said, yeah, we know bullshit when we see tyrants acting like tyrannical beasts. And they said no excessive fines or punishment. $500 million disgorgement penalty for a victimless crime in which everybody was happy is about as unconstitutional as it gets. Might be even more unconstitutional than waterboarding. I shouldn't say that because waterboarding is pretty arguably unconstitutional, except there might be some constitutional means to it. And at the very least, in theory, I don't agree with waterboarding, people, by the way, just so we're clear. In theory, at the very least, you're dealing with enemy combatants. Although I guess to Letitia James, Donald John Trump is an enemy combatant. An appellate court has thrown out the $500 million civil fraud penalty against President Donald Trump in a high-profile case brought by Big Tish, who's having her big tush slapped today. New York Appellate Division overturned the penalty, ruling the disgorgement was an excessive fine that violates the Eighth Amendment of the Constitution of these United States of America, Fox. 5-member panel all upheld the findings that Trump and his company were liable, affirming that James acted with her authority and that injunctive relief to curb Trump organization practices was appropriate. That's going up to appeal anyhow. We'll see what happens with that. The ruling leaves liability intact, but eliminates the massive financial penalty of $364 million plus interest, which rises to around $500 million. Trump took the truth, said total victory, fake news, yada, yada, yada. I greatly respect the fact that the court had the courage to throw out this unlawful, disgraceful decision that was hurting businesses all throughout New York State. Others were afraid to do business there. The amount, including interest and penalties, was over $550 million. It was a political witch hunt in a business sense, the likes of which no one has ever seen. He also blasted the case as election interference, saying it was tried during the 2024 presidential campaign, while praising Justice David Friedman, who issued a partial dissent. Friedman, this is where people, you're going to say, oh, it's the Jews, and you're going to you're going to ignore the one if you want to, like, oh, there's bad people on both sides. You had what they called the first impeachment the Jew coup. I don't know if you ever heard that term. They called it the Jew coup because of the amount of Jewish politicians, or the disproportionate or statistically overrepresentation of Jewish politicians in it, ignoring the fact that there were many people defending Trump who were also of Jewish faith, although not acting in any capacity as representatives of the Jewish people. Friedman wrote that James' true aim was political and argued the entire case should be dismissed. He said her ultimate goal was not market hygiene, but political hygiene, ending with the derailment of the President Trump's political career and the destruction of his real estate business. If I haven't presented the evidence to support that, no one will ever be convinced. This will go to appeal, and that dissenting judge, in his dissenting on the dismissal of the entire case, might be vindicated at the higher level. At the very least, right now, unanimously Trump vindicated with this idiotic, insane $500 million penalty disgorgement being overturned. Friedman blasted James's use of Section 6312 of the New York's executive law, which gives state attorney broad power to pursue civil frauds. Where did it go? Civil fraud claims. He wrote it was unprecedented and political, given James essentially limitless power to prosecute her political enemies. Friedman wrote that Trump's business deals involved sophisticated parties who profited without harming the public, and concluded he would reverse the judgment and dismiss the complaint. Section 6312 has never been used in the way it is being used in this case, namely to attack successful private commercial transactions negotiated at arm's length between highly sophisticated parties fully capable of monitoring and defending their own interests, Friedman wrote. No shit, Sherlock, Friedman, considering the bank would do its own due diligence, would do its own evaluations, said that they would have done the deal again, said that they were trying to get Trump's business, not vice versa. All parties to these private transactions profited handsomely from the deals, from which there was no discernible negative impact on the public interest. Because the judges were split on liability, the case is now likely headed to New York's highest court, the Court of Appeals. James, a Democrat elected Attorney General in 2018, has long had Trump in her crosshairs. Probably not the best word to use. Idiots. During her campaign, what was it? Wasn't it Biden who said, well, at least I didn't use the word crosshairs? Well, maybe Fox News, you don't want to use the word crosshairs. Just word to the wise. During her campaign, she called him an illegitimate president. We saw all that. Since Trump returned to office, the Justice Department has opened a grand jury investigation into James and issued subpoenas tied to civil fraud cases against Trump. James has alleged that Trump is using the federal government to go after her politically. Oh, what an odd thing to say for a biatch who ran on a campaign of promising to go after Donald Trump, the illegitimate president. What an odd confession through projection thing to say, Letitia. Oh, by the way, you lied on your forms. You can't have more than one primary residence. You know damn well what you did. And by the way, by your own tweet, anyone who lies would have the book thrown at them. Prepare, Letitia, to have the book thrown at you. The Justice Department is also investigating her alleged mortgage fraud, including misrepresenting her primary residence on loans for homes in Virginia and New York. She denies the allegations. Well, Letitia, we have the papers. We've seen the papers. Claims Trump is behind the move, calling it a revenge tour for the civil fraud suit. Hold on one second. Let me do this here. Letitia James mortgage fraud images. Let's get the picture of the document. I mean, it's pretty clear cut what she said on her documents. Is this it right here? Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. Hold on. Wait a minute. Something ain't right. Here we go. Let's see if we can get the actual document. Here you go. What's that, Letitia? Oh, know all men by these presents that the undersigned Letitia James does hereby constitute and appoint Shamise Thompson Harrison of the whatever here as her attorney in name, blah, 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 for the property, Norfolk, Virginia. I hereby declare that I intend to occupy this property as my principal residence. Oh, who signed it? Letitia James. It's a good thing we now know that no one is above the law, that anyone who lies will have the book thrown at them, and that you are a godforsaken scoundrel of a liar who deserves to have the book thrown at her. Jail. Jail for Letitia James, stripper of her attorney general position, malicious, vindictive, unprofessional, unbecoming of the office that she holds, and now she is allegedly also the very same criminal fraudster that she accused Donald John Trump of being.